Economics as constructed has a fatal flaw. Humans are not who it says they are. It is as if chemistry had built an entire theory around the hydrogen atom having two protons instead of one, or as if physics had built an entire theory that gravity led things to rise instead of fall. This is a bold accusation, but by the end of this video I hope to show that there is some reason not to think it mere clickbait. To begin, it may be helpful to establish first what economics is the study of. Now, economics, and this is straight from my Econ 101 course back in my freshman year, is the study of the allocation of scarce resources. From here, there are two branches, positive or descriptive and normative or prescriptive economics. You could say positive economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources by humans, while normative economics is the study of the just, efficient allocation of scarce resources. At first glance, you may think my complaint has to do with mere positive instead of normative economics. It's very trendy nowadays to accuse economics of not conforming to this or that psychological study, that the way that economics says humans allocate scarce resources is different from how they actually do it. This is no doubt true, and recent work such as that by Nobel Prize winners Kahneman and Tversky delves into the science behind why. I do have a complaint against positive economics, which I will explain later, but my overall critique runs much deeper than that of Kahneman and Tversky and has to do with the preconceived notions of rationality that normative economics has. In short, economics subscribes to a utilitarian framework that places the well-being of the individual, however that is defined, at the center of any rational agent's motivation. Now, it is perfectly true that we ought to love ourselves. Christ's teaching, love thy neighbor as thyself, and the golden rule implied that the extent to which you love yourself is the extent to which you can love others. It is therefore not only good, but our duty to love ourselves, where love means the willing of the good of oneself or another. However, economics' utilitarian framing of the question where love of self supersedes love of others, where the well-being of others is desirable to the extent that it promotes the well-being of the self instead of the other way around, gets the problem completely backwards. It's a subtle trap, but a deadly one. It's akin to the old dispute between Aristotle and the Peripatetics and Epicurus and the hedonists. Pleasure is for the sake of virtue, not virtue for the sake of pleasure. So, in this case, love of oneself is for the sake of love of others or of God, not that loving others or God is for the sake of love of oneself. On a practical level, this may not seem like it makes such a big difference, but the essence of sin, from a Catholic perspective, is the placing of other things, such as oneself, before God and then neighbor. In other words, it is impossible not to sin when making this subtle sleight of hand, however much you may think you can simulate goodness, because the intention will be messed up. This is, I think, the reason behind Timothy's teaching, love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. Since desire for selfish gain, even non-monetary goods, corrupts the right intention. What it is rational to do is the best thing. The best thing to do is to make yourself and others happy, and seeing others happy will make you happy. My complaint doesn't end here, however. I protest not only against economics, but psychology as well, and this is the complaint against positive economics I said I would explain later. Psychology is just as, if not more bankrupt, no pun intended, than economics. The studies showing humans' so-called irrationality are accurate, so far as they go, but modern psychology uses only experiments as a method and is materialistic, which is why it both doesn't have the full picture and shows a distorted one. The pith of the debate comes to this. Did God create man, or is matter all there is? Depending on how you answer, you either get a deeply personalistic view of the human person or a mechanistic one. If God was the one who created us and he is all good, all powerful, and all knowing, then he created us for love, a fundamentally outward focused movement. If matter is all there is, and evolution is true, then the self is all that matters. There is no middle ground, and each presents a radically different psychology. Not saying evolution isn't true. The truth, as I firmly believe it to be, is that God made us to love and be loved fundamentally. But even if you disagree, let's put aside this fantasy that materialism and theism can peacefully coexist under the umbrella of economics and the psychology that backs it as things currently stand. We crave the love and attention of others, not their money bags, and we crave even more the ability to give ourselves to a cause greater than ourselves. Man is a political animal that happens to need scarce resources, not an automaton who seeks only after said resources. That is how economics should approach its study of the allocation of scarce resources, with the knowledge that man is passing through on a journey to God, needing assistance on the way. What would this sort of economics look like in practice? Well, it would mean a bunch of different things, and I'm not exactly sure what all the repercussions would be, but two things I can say would happen. First of all, it would put aside the idea that our economy is run off of greed and ought to be. Adam Smith's invisible hand argument is the most famous instantiation of this, and in the same passage as where he quotes the invisible hand, he says, quote, "By pursuing his own interest, he frequently promotes that of the society more effectually than when he really intends to promote it." End quote. No doubt many people in the United States today work for greedy purposes, but that does not mean that that is how it should be legislated, and certainly not that that is what would be most efficient. I suspect that the economy survives because of those who don't give in to their wanton greed and suffer at the hands of others for it, for a higher purpose, not the other way around. In fact, you might say that the saying is biblical. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, not just 7. Finally, macroeconomics would be updated to satisfy this new way of thinking, and usury would be clearly defined and legislated against. Not that I have an answer to what usury is, because I don't. Although I should probably do more research on that. Not saying that, yeah, there's probably an answer out there somewhere. There are probably more things that would change with this new style of thinking, but these are the most prominent. In conclusion, economics is the study of the allocation of scarce resources, with positive economics the study of how humans do it, and normative economics the study of how to do it justly and efficiently. The critique of economics that on its positive side it doesn't conform with modern psychology is surface level. In this video, I present two deeper complaints. First, that economics makes the means of self-satisfaction for others' benefit the end rather than the means. And second, that the modern psychology which economics is being updated with is directly at odds with the idea that we were made fundamentally to love and be loved, making the scarce resources we need on the way but tools in the hands of pilgrims.